All right. And I think we're live. Andrew, does it say we're live on your end?
Yeah, there's a little live thing in the corner.
Okay,
So
perfect. So we're going to assume that the people at large at Facebook and beyond can hear us. So welcome everyone to our Mystical Mondays with Seaside Shadows. We're still waiting on a couple of our folks to join us, but we're going to get you guys started as it is just after 7:30. Hopefully some of you had today off for Columbus Day. We are weekend people, as you know, so we don't really know what a weekend is, but we're hoping that you got to experience a weekend. And some of you hopefully got to see us this past weekend at Seaside Shadows. So a little bit about what we're going to be doing tonight during our discussion. We're going to be talking about our virtual segments of the past month. It is October, so we are going to also put in some chat amongst each other about Halloween and the tours and everything exciting that's going on here at Seaside Shadows. And of course, we want you to send us questions. If you didn't watch the virtual segments, that's okay. This is a perfect opportunity to chat with us about anything related to the paranormal, the supernatural, ghost hunting, looking for haunted places in Connecticut, things like that. This is a great chance to chat with us about it because our next Mystical Monday will not be until November. So make sure you send us some questions if you have any. And we did have a few that came in right away. So before we get to do all of the spooky stuff and I get to introduce you to everybody, I want to kind of get started with the virtual segments that we did and our most recent Witchy Wednesday. And there were actually a few questions about that. Sarah did a fabulous segment on new moon altars. And altars are, of course, something that you can do at varying occasions and varying times. But one of the first questions that came about in new moon altars, a discussion about manifestation and trying to generate things into your life that you're trying to make as goals come true, was about timing. So someone asked, specifically on the new moon, and I'll let Sarah answer this, like, do you have to start the altar and your intentions and kind of manifestation work the night before? Do you do it the day of the new moon? There's always that question too, of which day is which. Does that matter, Sarah, if they do it the night before, the night of? What's more powerful?
So with those kind of things, especially with phases of the moon, it's always best to do your intention work during that phase of the moon. So if you are looking to do things on the new moon, starting a new business or even just starting a new goal for yourself, it's really important to just do it on, even if you're in the contemplation phase, like, I don't know if I want to do it, make the decision on the new moon that night, and it'll help you gain traction in your goals in that way. But if you also want to do more literal work, like setting up an altar space, on the new moon would be perfect. But if you want to get everything together on the day before, that's great too. So that way you have everything ready that night.
Perfect. Now, you can have your altar kind of set up in general, right? And just add things to it for the new moon. Like you can kind of keep an altar set up in your home if you wanted to.
Yeah, so a lot of people that I know, we all have altars set up all the time. And then when it comes up to the new moon, we can write down our intentions and burn our intentions to put them out into the ether and into the world as we see fit. So yeah, you have your altar up all the time, or you can even store it away. So.
Okay, very cool. And the other question, and I was really interested in this question as well. What's the difference between a new moon altar and a full moon altar? Because we'd hear about positive manifestation with both. So what are kind of the biggest differences?
what most is important to know about the differences is that for new moon altars, that's when you're starting something new completely. So whether or not you are trying to get a new job or you're just starting a job rather, that was when you should put out your intentions for, I got this new job, I'm going to be starting it, let's do something about it and put my intentions into this. Versus on the new moon, or the full moon rather, you can basically do anything and it heightens all of your manifestations. So if you are feeling self-love is super great for full moons, and if you are trying to finish a cycle as well, putting that on the full moon as well. But the new moons are really for new beginnings.
Okay,
is the easy way to remember.
So full moons are like kind of about the completion of a goal, and kind of celebrating that. Is there anything that you can start on a full moon?
Yeah, you can start anything on a full moon. The full moon is super powerful in and of itself. She is a divine creature and she loves to give off her energies. One of my favorite things to do on a full moon is to create full moon water, which is just allowing a glass jar full of water to drink in the rays of the full moon. And that's really powerful for some spell work.
Yes, hopefully, if any of our Seaside Shadows regulars are watching, we did some full moon gathering months ago, amid the first shutdown. We kind of talked about full moon gathering, and we like to use full moon in our Witchy Wednesdays often when we make full moon, not even full moon, when we make lavender water, rosemary water, we like to infuse it with the full moon water and make sure that that's in there for some extra magic. And I'm just going to, I think our other folks are here, so I'm just going to admit them in. Give me a couple seconds. All right. I think I have everybody here. We'll let their audio connect for a minute. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So I think I have everyone here. So for Shay and Sophie, who are just joining, we were just talking with Sarah about her Witchy Wednesday segment that she filmed a few weeks ago. She was doing a new moon altar, and we had some great questions from some folks about when to make a new moon altar and differences between new moon and full moon altars. But I did want everyone to know, because this is our first Witchy Wednesday, our first Mystical Monday with the new Seaside Shadows team for 2020, and hopefully for a long time to come. So we have some new tour guides, storytellers, virtual segment filmers here. So for everyone that's watching, you can kind of see our names in the boxes, which is a very helpful thing here on Zoom. But you know that I'm Courtney. You've been listening to me talk to you for a while now. Next to me is my husband, Marty, who, if you go on tours, you'll see him doing security work oftentimes with me, showing people evidence of ghosts on camera and things of that nature. Sarah was the lovely young lady who on my screen is directly next to my face. And she was just talking to you about the new moon and full moon. She's one of our newest tour guides. She started this summer doing a fantastic job in Mystic. And of course, some of you are likely familiar with Andrew, who's here. Not new, but fantastic. And if you haven't met him, you should. He's the gentleman here in the top hat. He's filmed many segments thus far and has been guiding in Mystic for, is it almost 3 years now, Andrew?
Yep.
Yeah, so a while. And we just actually celebrated our 7-year anniversary with Seaside Shadows. So Andrew's been here for almost half of it, which is fabulous. And then next on my screen, next to Andrew, hopefully this is how other people see it too, is Miss Shay, who has just joined our team. She's training to be a tour guide. She is also helping out with all these virtual segments while we're kind of walking the pavement in Mystic a lot this October. And she did a fabulous segment poor thing even stubbed her toe and injured herself on her first virtual segment. But she did a fabulous segment on Maud the Witch, which we're going to talk about next, in Voluntown and the strange burials of Maud the Witch and the rumors about them. And then next we have the fabulous Sophie, who's always dressed in her best Victorian attire, which I'm jealous of. I really need to like I'm in a hoodie and like, look at this. So she is another fabulous new tour guide in Mystic. People have been having such enjoyable tours with her. Her storytelling experience is second to none. And she even has some experience that I think a lot of Stephen King fans out there would appreciate out in Colorado at the Stanley Hotel. So something, to maybe ask her a few spooky questions about too, if you get to take a tour with her. So this is what I'm very excited to say as our amazing 2020 roster of new tour guides and storytellers and bringers of spookiness, and of course the little history that comes with all these spooky stories. So if you see them around Mystic, give them a big hello and a big greeting and share with them any ghost stories that you have. If you have any questions for any of us specifically, make sure you tell us in the comments so that we know that. I'm going to keep going through and Andrew's going to keep an eye on any questions that come in. I'm going to keep going through with the questions that
did have a question.
You do have a question.
Yes. So on Facebook, Deborah Beecham asks, I have a kind of weird question. I have a lot of chatter in my head of people who have passed. I saged the house and now everything is silent in head. Did I drive out the spirits?
No. I mean, I'll let anyone else kind of jump in too if they want, but my first instinct is to say no. You didn't drive out the spirits. What happens is when you do the sage, it's a cleansing ritual. And so when you were doing that cleansing, you were setting a boundary that the communication with you was too much, too fast, and that you needed some space. And boundaries are important when working with spirit because they get excited and they can really kind of come into every part of our lives without those. So the saging, in my interpretation, was your cleansing and setting a boundary. And you can start to work to establish, if you want to establish healthy communication with them, ways of doing so, lighting candles, talking to them, setting intentions, but making sure you close doors that you open when you do so. But no, they're not gone. They're just respecting your wishes at the moment. That's my interpretation of that. I don't know if anyone feels differently, but sage is a beautiful cleanser and it sends a nice message. Yes, I see nodding. So I think we're all in agreement. You didn't do anything wrong, but that's a very good question.
And if you are trying to actually limit them, we have ways to do that.
Yes. White lights are also really good if you don't have any sage around, or if you don't.
Connection's cutting out, guys.
You're kind of still there though. I see your name. I also recommend, I don't know, I like burning sage, I do, but my animals don't love it, so I also get a sage spray that I spray around my house, and it smells lovely, and it has the same kind of effects. I usually have white sage candles going. There's one going right behind Marty's head right now. Just general keeping cleansing of energy is good, not just for spirit work, but also for, living energies and things that are going on in our lives. So, sage is a healthy thing, and it's never going to fully expel spirits from you being around. But that's a great question. I'm going to keep going, and Andrew's going to let me know if any more come in with questions. Proceeding down the segments that we had, we did one. So the next segment was about Maud the Witch. And Miss Shea did a fantastic job at introducing us to three possible spirits that could be identified as Maud. This is out in kind of like the Sterling Hells Hollow area. And the three spirits that could be Maud are a 2-year-old girl who did die in the area, and people have had spooky experiences near her grave. Then about 100 years later or thereabouts, a mysterious stone emerged with just the name Maud on it. Which some believe to be another child, a little bit older, maybe 8 years old when they passed, rumored of smallpox or scarlet fever, I believe. And then the rumor was that particular person's mom was a witch that was protecting the soul of her child. And then the third version of Maud was that a Native American girl was actually captured by some British soldiers during the Revolutionary War, and she was cruelly treated by them and scalped by them, and is crying in the woods. And some say that she may be referred to as Maud. So the question is one of them the real Maud, or are they all real? And this Hell's Hollow kind of, combining their stories together. What would you say, Shay?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So, I remember like being younger and like adolescent ages, hearing like all these stories, and I thought like, oh my goodness. And like I did like remember like I did my research, and I was like reading the stories and like looking up public records of this person named Maud, and the only one that was occurring was Maud Reynolds. And her family owned a big plot of land in the Sterling Voluntown area, which is no longer owned by anybody. It's now state land, and so I just believe that like it's the spirit of the 2-year-old girl, also as well as like the Native American child, just because it's like there's like records and like people like stating that there's like more than one like spirit out there. You hear like screaming, but then you hear like, or you'll see like a little girl in a white dress like running in the woods. Like there was one time like someone said in like records like on Facebook saying they saw a little girl running in the woods around like 6 p.m. during sundown, and they were like looking for her. They're like, where is this child? I need to find her, make sure she's okay. And she ran behind a tree, and when they caught up to her to the tree, she wasn't there. So I thought maybe it's this like the 2-year-old Maud, but then late at night you'll hear screaming, like someone screaming for help, maybe screaming for their mother. And I kind of believe that's the Native American girl that was brutally like murdered at a young age, because you'll hear like I take hikes late at night, and I'll be in the Patchogue area, and I'll hear like screaming, which like I live in the area, so like we hear fisher cats, but sometimes they'll sound actually like a little girl. So I'm not that skeptical about the fisher cat side, but more of like it does sound like a child being like hurt or being like murdered at that time. And so yeah, like everything's still up in the air. Like I believe, in my personal view, that there's two spirits that haunt that area.
Okay, so in some, it kind of sounds like Maud is a little girl that we know died, Maud Reynolds. But obviously, a 2-year-old being called a witch is kind of hard. A 2-year-old's not going to be practicing any sort of witchcraft that we're aware of. In the 1600s, obviously, accusations of witchcraft could fly around, but and no one was excused from that. So that, of course, could be the case. But I would be more inclined to believe that the mother was someone who people were skeptical of her practices. And it does sound like maybe the later Maud Stone maybe isn't based in reality, but kind of like an homage to the folklore. But I do believe, there's something, of course, to the name Hell's Hollow, which was probably named by the Puritan settlers. They always thought the devil walked everywhere in Connecticut and named after everything after him. Here in my town, we have Devil's Hop Yard, because they think the geological formations from the water were formed by the devil's hoof prints. So they tended to err on the side of Satan back in the day, but that could explain Maud and her mother and maybe this weird energy of how they were treated.
Yeah.
But I do think the Native American girl being there is probably not Maud, but interestingly related to this land that is filled with folklore and is still a story that I find fascinating, because what we always hear, you know, at least in history, is that the natives were the ones scalping the British settlers. And this story says the opposite. And I recently found in Preston, Connecticut, which isn't far, documentation that many natives were scalped by early British settlers. I think Andrew was there when I found that recently. We were pretty like, you know, not that we thought scalping was that common, but we didn't realize that it was a completely reversed thing. So, you know, Maud's story kind of brings that out as well.
Yeah. Well, my town, that I live in the town of Griswold, and there was like rumors. I don't think it's true. I still have to do my research about it, but like my high school was like buried or like built near an Indian burial, because there's the Patchogue River that goes like right behind the school, and people believe that the school was built on an Indian burial ground. And there's been like a couple like eerie things that like I like being in high school, it was like very eerie, where you feel like you're being followed, or you're being like chased while you're on the trails, or you're feeling like at a football game, like because the Saturday night lights are right there and the trail is like right next to it, you like hear or feel like somebody's watching you in that area. And so I like there's a lot of Native American, because Pete's like like my ancestors and the Native American people, they inhabited this entire area. So like there's no doubt that like everywhere there's like somebody or somebody's great grandfather was buried in the back of a high schooler. And there was war here, so there's a lot of like spiritual energy, like from the natives, from colonists, from people that were just trying to live. So there's an absolute no doubt, like all of that stuff has happened.
You're right. I think, you know, some of you have met John Zaffis, who does our events with us. And one of the things he loves to say, because people always ask him, you know, he's the haunted collector, and they say to him, was anyone buried here? And he's Connecticut based, and he'll always say the whole state is on basically an Indian burial ground. Someone's buried everywhere, you know?
Exactly.
So there's, you know, there's some truth to that, I think, in New England. And, you know, I'm excited too. I don't want to give away everything about your story, Shay, but you have some unique connections actually to mystics, history, the Mystic Massacre and the Pequots, and some family stories you've actually been able to share. So if you get to meet Shay on an upcoming tour or event, I highly encourage you to ask her about her ancestors and what they endured, and some of the stories they continue to share even around this time of year, which is really interesting. And then I'll just go to the next virtual segment and we'll talk about Halloween stuff after that together. So one of the things that kept coming up about Lover's Leap that people were asking me afterwards, and Shay did some research on this as well, so she's probably familiar. You know, we both kind of did the Lover's Leap story that night. There was a lot of technical issues. I had to do it like 3 times. Maybe no spirit wanted us to tell the story. But it is also a Native American story based in New Milford. But one of the things that was coming up with people is, why does this story sound familiar? Like it comes from more than one place. And I think I'll even throw Marty under the bus. He was playing like a video game yesterday, and he said, hey, this place is called Lover's Leap. And Lover's Leap comes up all the time in these kind of towns all over. And the story, of course, being about this, you know, kind of doomed love, Romeo and Juliet style, between, you know, one of the natives that resided in the area and a white man that had settled there, you know, a la Pocahontas, John Smith, Disney version type thing. They fall in love, and then, you know, this tragic ending, they cannot be together until, you know, death. And so the question is, why does this seem so familiar? And what we found, I found a very interesting article in the Connecticut Magazine about this, where the Lover's Leap story was told to be 100% true. Like, everyone just tells the story that this woman didn't want to marry anyone other than the white man. She goes to commit suicide, jumps off the waterfall, and in her dying moment, the one she wants to marry finally returns back, grabs her hand, and jumps off the waterfall with her, and they die together. It's cinematic right there, right? But could it have happened that way? So the folklorists say in Connecticut Magazine, no, that these were all efforts on behalf of the early white settlers to make it sound like their two communities were peacefully coexisting, to make it sound like they could have had these lives together, that this Native American chief would always be the evil one that would stop the lovers from being together, and these suicide missions kind of come from it. So it was kind of almost like this propaganda to promote that they could have had this nice love affair. And the thing that backs up that this might not be entirely true is that these land formations weren't as they are now. So people are like, that waterfall isn't the way it is now. Those paths aren't the way it is now. So logistically, that story could not make sense. There was barely anything there. So, the question is, wait a minute, if I hear people screaming in the woods, if I know there's a haunted couple in the woods, who are they if that's not true? So I can't answer that question. What I can say, again, is my gut instinct, and I think all of us kind of study folklore, is that there's truth in the folklore stories and there's embellishments. I do think that there probably were tragic relationships. I do think that the two communities did have a hard time together. I don't think it was simply that the white man didn't want to return to her, and he was described, his nickname was Wandering White Man. So I don't know what else to call him. Legend, they just called him Wandering White Man, so that's his name. So do I think that Wandering White Man really just wandered away waiting for her to commit suicide because his people didn't want her to marry him? I don't know if that's true. Why would I say that? And it's painted that, oh, the chief made him go away. I don't know if that's true either. So maybe those parts aren't true, but maybe there was this love that couldn't be because those two communities weren't coexisting. Maybe there was this tragic death. Maybe it wasn't the romanticism of someone leaping from a waterfall and touching their lover's hand at the last moment as they both die, but it does make a good story, right? So I do think that there's a truth, and I think there's tragedy, and I think there's spirits in these areas that are absolutely felt. I think the details, because they've been told through oral stories and not written for hundreds of years, have changed. If you look up Lover's Leap, you can find probably like 3 or 4 different versions of this story, and people's favorites. And Andrew, I'm just going to have you, I talked to you about this. It was mentioned that this story was very similar to the legend of Lake Poketipog and Princess Poketipog in East Hampton. What do you think are the similarities between the two stories?
Well, the leap, for one. I mean,
the leap. Right.
But
it's always the woman too. The poor woman's always leaping to her death.
It's always, but in the case of Princess Poketipog, she chooses to take it upon herself, and it's not a love for a romantic love. It's a love for her people and what she thinks needs to be done to save her people and to get the gods back on their side.
Right. So more of a different version that's similar but still causing this early death. Do you think that the legend of Lake Poketipog was kind of dominated by that early British settler mentality, or do you think that that's more authentically theirs?
I think it's more authentically native, because there's really nothing to do with British settlers in the story.
Mhm.
It's all about Princess Polkadot and the
Yeah.
tribe.
So there are still some good oral histories out there then. So some of
Yeah.
them can be proven. But I would love to find out. So if people can like kind of write in the comments, whether you're watching live or later, do you know of a lover's leap near you or that you've passed? And if so, what's the story? Is it the same? I'd be interested to know. Is it the same version? I mean, so nondescript. Is there a wandering white man and some beautiful girl he's to marry? Or is it a totally different version that you know at your lover's leap? So let us know what you think, and let us know if you've been to the one in New Milford and you think no, it's 100% true. This is what happened. And, there's proof. We'd love to know kind of what you think. But I'm always fascinated by that, the truths in folklore versus the embellishments that are told for certain narratives that are trying to be perpetuated into history. And what do we believe? So the spirits probably are the only ones that know the truth. So I think that's it for questions I had on the segments. Unless anyone else has any others, you can send them to us and we'll answer them right away. I'm going to do a real quick frequently asked questions of October, because it being October, I have no shortage of phone calls, texts, emails with questions about what's happening at Seaside Shadows. Huh? Oh, Marty's reminding me that we did have a very special guest that I put it on Facebook, so you guys kind of know. Caroline Williams from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and Halloween 2 and Leprechaun 3. Marty's a very good horror movie person. He's educating me on this. She came on a wonderful tour of Mystic. I got to be her host this week, but I want to just give a quick shout out. She has a new movie coming out. She is fantastic. It's supposed to be just absolutely terrifying, filmed right in Connecticut in Willimantic. It's called 10 Minutes to Midnight. And it will be there's going to be a virtual premiere in a couple weeks. There's going to be some local premieres. It's hard in theaters right now, although it will be in some theaters. So definitely go check it out. It should be a fantastic October edition. And I will be sharing, we filmed a spooky story together. And so I'll be sharing that over the coming weeks as well. So go see that movie. She was very, very fabulous. And hopefully she'll come see us again in Mystic soon. But I will answer those frequently asked questions of Seaside Shadows in October. And if you guys have any additions to them, let me know. First question, are there any more boat tours? I get asked this every day. Andrew's face is just paralyzed in just agony of having to continue to answer this question. There is one more boat tour. However, there are no spots left on said boat. We are very grateful that the boat tours sold out so quickly. They will come back in 2021. Andrew is going to be a boat tour guide in 2021. And I'm hoping these other lovely ladies will be learning the boat tour next year too. But no more boat tours this year. For ticket space, the one that's going out, if you do have tickets for that, bundle up. It's going to be cold and the waters will be rough because it is the end of October. The next frequently asked question. Hey, tickets cost more in October, or am I reading that wrong? You're not reading it wrong. October is our peak season. So our October tickets are $5 more. If you want the normal price tickets, good news. You can come see us in November, December, and pretty much any other month of the year. We'll be back in March as well. Knock on wood, knocking on all the wood that will be back in March this year. So you can come any of those times for the normal price, but it is a bit more in October. What's another frequently asked question? Where are you? Why don't you have directions on your website? We are in Mystic, and I won't tell you where the tours meet because we have a very strict capacity on the tours, and we can't take people that come right up and want to join, or else we will be violating that capacity rule. And we want to make sure you have your spot. So it's reservation only. And then when you reserve, you will get an email that tells you where to come and find us. We're lurking with the dead people. That's what you need to know. And we will bring you to meet them. So that's another big question. Capacity. A lot of people are asking our capacity, especially during COVID. People want to know how many people am I going to be walking with? It depends. If you come on a Saturday, odds are you're going to be walking with 50 people. That's our capacity. It's been working well. It's been joyous groups, very enthusiastic, very spooktacular. But you are going to be with a bigger group on the weekends. If you come during the week, you could be on a much smaller group and have a much more intimate experience and get to know all of these fabulous people here on this call and get to talk with them a bit more about the ghost than you might be able to on a Saturday, or even, like last night, Sophie was out with a sold out group on a Sunday night. So these things can happen. So we suggest coming on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday if that is what you're looking for, a more intimate experience. If you want the full Halloween hoopla, come on Saturday if you can get a spot. But next Saturday is 2 out of 3 tours are sold out. So please make sure you get your tickets right away. The next thing is virtual Salem tour. People are asking, how many more will there be? I live in a different time zone. There's going to be just one this year. Salem's very strict on their precautions, so we can't keep going up there. We want to give you one good tour. So there's just one tour in October. That's this coming Friday. You can buy one ticket for your household. And if you cannot watch it live, you can have a link to watch it later. So it's still going to be the same tour. It's still going to be me giving it. You just, will just know that it's not happening in real time, if that makes sense. So that's another common question. Marty's kind of whispering in my ears because he's been listening to me telling him what all the calls have been. Am I forgetting anything? Oh, last but certainly not least, the Dark Manor. If you have what we call the Twice the Fear package, a lot of you are asking, where's the Dark Manor? When can I use the ticket? How does this work? As long as you take the tour at the date and time that you booked the tour in Mystic, you can take that ticket to Dark Manor later that night or any other night that they're open, and they will admit you in. There's no worries past there. They are about 35 minutes away from Mystic in Baltic, Connecticut. They're the only haunted house in southeastern Connecticut. So you'll just put that in your GPS when you're ready to go. You'll have emails or directions in your email, but that's it. That's all you need to know. Sorry if we overcomplicated it, but we promise that's it.
And if you want to wait until next Sunday and possibly Friday the 30th, you might see me as Michael Myers.
Oh yeah, he makes cameos at Dark Manor. I don't so much, but he does. I'm better at the ghosty part. He's very good at being the monster. And who has to go home at night and see a Michael Myers mask on their nightstand next to their bed? That's me. So I have to live knowing that I'm married to someone who likes to dress as a monster. So that's my reality. But I think that's it for the frequently asked questions for Halloween. If I forgot any, of course, send us an email. I just wanted to make one kind of big blanket statement. That's what's going on for October. But the last thing, and I wanted if you guys can just chat on this, because you've been out on the front lines, you've been with the people, but more importantly, you've been with the ghosts. So if I can have you guys go through and just each one of you, and I'll do the last one because I have something that just happened to me on a tour. Tell me what has happened to you either during a virtual segment or during a tour that you think has been a really interesting paranormal experience that you or one of the guests have had. So I'm going to start because I'm going to go the way I introduced with you, Sarah.
Sure. So I had a tour that was in the Whitehall Cemetery, and I had a lovely lady who was completely skeptical, and she wasn't entirely sure what was going on, other than she was really excited to be there and she loved the tour. And she's like, she asked me after the tour, is there anyone here that used to bake? And I was very confused. And she just says, it smells like cinnamon apples. And she kept saying that it smelled like cinnamon apples for the entire tour. And there was no explainable reason for it. But she said that she felt a motherly presence and that it was a very warm and friendly feeling. So I have a suspicion that it may have been Sarah.
I had a feeling Sarah would like you because you are Sarah, but
of course. But I believe it was Sarah Woodbridge because she said that she first felt it back in the back corner of the cemetery. So that one was super special for sure.
Oh, so the lovely lady of the cemetery is out and about. I love to hear that. We have so many gentlemen spirits who, God bless them, they're amazing. But I love to hear that the ladies are wandering around as well. So I'm going to go down on my view. And Shay, you went out to Hell's Hollow. Did anything happen? And did you feel actually that what happened to you was because of spirit?
So, okay. So when I stubbed my toe, I was wearing like slippers, like normal like slippers, like you like they're comfy, they're little moccasin looking things, and there was nothing in front of me. So I was just walking and then like because I was checking my map because it's a really long way to get to like the site. And I'm walking and I look at my phone for like 2 seconds and I start walking and like I said, there's nothing there and I trip on nothing. And then my toe, like my toenail, disgusting, but like half of it was just like flipped up. And so I had to like tend to that. And then we got back and like to the spot where like we finally get to the spot and there were like these little trinket things that were behind me. Like there was like crystals and like some flowers and a couple pennies like at the site. And when I was wrapping up all the stuff, because it was windy, but like this is heavy things, they were all moved to like one side of the site. So I decided to move them back, and then I forgot my sheet, like a sheet of paper, so I didn't want to like litter, so I went back and they were all moved to the side again. And I was like, no one was near us, and I'm with my boyfriend. I was like freaking out. I was like, I thought this was just like a touristy site. He was like, he goes, I don't know. So I decided to move it back and I took a picture. And I go back again, not even like 20 minutes later, because I just wanted to see, because it's like now I'm like little skeptical. And I go back and all the stuff was moved back to one side. And I was like, huh.
I love that.
Weird. And yeah, so
I was
like,
worried. I was worried about you because I thought I regretted this later. I said to Marty, should I have sent her there? Because the legend, and I'm a believer, so I take these things seriously. But the legend says that if you say Maud's name by her grave, that, you know, that you'll get hurt or injured. Yeah. And then poor Shay goes, I went there and I'm hurt. And I'm like, oh my God, this Maud, you know, thing is no joke.
I said her name like, I said her name like 20 times. And because I'm like talking to my boyfriend Alex, and I was like, oh, I'm like, he was like, yeah, he's like, and what are you doing? I was like, Maud's grave. He was like, okay. And then like, I'm going, like doing the story in my head and like making sure I don't forget anything. Said like Maud like 20 times before even getting there.
So and she was ready for you.
She was like, oh, I'm ready. You said my name like 20 times. And I was like, okay, I'm here.
So
I was like, after I left, I was like, have a great day.
Cautionary tale, Maud does know when you say her name. So I'm going to keep going. And next to Shay now on my screen is Miss Sophie. Sophie's been out a lot the past few nights. And I know activity has been heightened, you know, in Mystic as we get close to Halloween. Sophie, have you had any paranormal experiences or have your guests on the tours lately?
Yeah, actually last week, I had a lady in the graveyard and the tour was over and everybody was leaving and she was just kind of hanging around and she came back into the graveyard afterwards and she said, "You might have noticed I was sitting down a lot on your tour." And I had noticed I would talk and look and she'd be sitting down. And I just thought she wasn't feeling well. She needed to lower her center of gravity, whatever. And she came up to me. She goes, "No," she says, "Remember how you were talking about the children, and about the need to, attach to whoever they feel an attachment to and to get their attention." I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, after we passed Benjamin's grave," she said, "I kept getting this feeling of someone tugging on me, like when kids want you to sit down and watch TV with them, kind of thing, that need to sit in your lap and just be with you." She said, "I started to get this overwhelming feeling of someone just trying to pull me down to sit with me." And she said, rather than fight that feeling and end up feeling faint, she said, "I would just give into it and just sit with what I was feeling." She said, "I thought you'd laugh at me, or at least the guests would laugh at me if I shared that with them." She said, "So I just let them think whatever they thought. And I figured I'd wait to the end to tell you I'm not being disrespectful by sitting on the ground," because she said, "I know that looks disrespectful." She said, "That was just what I was experiencing at that particular time."
Oh,
And
I
I
love
told her
that.
that was absolutely fine.
And I think what I like about that too is Benjamin is a young spirit on our tour that we have kind of always said follows people through the graveyard. He's not so much like confined. A lot of them stand near to their personal burial spot, but Benjamin's never felt confined in that way, and he's always kind of latched on, as this woman sounds like she described, to a person that he selects and kind of follows them throughout the tour. So that experience actually, is in keeping with Benjamin, but it's kind of nice to know that he made himself known that strongly. And I can assume she must have had a maternal nature to her, because Sarah Woodbridge would have been okay with him going with
And
her.
it might have been another child. It could have been something else within the graveyard that just said, "Oh, here's a person that's open. I need some quality time with that person." So
Yeah, and they know, we have the little girls. It could have been like you said. I like that. That's kind of what I like, and what we kind of like at Seaside Shadows is the spirits are there. And while it's always going to be creepy to know that someone deceased is with you, there's still this sense of their humanity and who they are, and keeping in terms of, it's not always a terrifying experience to have them nearby. It can be, a friendly, they're like us, and we have this kinship with them. And I like that, but with the woman baking, and with Benjamin, or one of the children, kind of just seeking attention, that human nature, that they're just us too, just from hundreds of years ago. And Andrew, you've been out a lot lately too. We've also started a new tour at Elm Grove Cemetery, where I know you and I have had some experiences getting dizzy in there. Have you had any notable experiences there or on any of your other tours that are sticking out to you right now?
Well, I mean, even the creation of the Elm Grove tour was a manner of experiences, because when we were there doing research, it was less of finding the graves that looked interesting and more like, why am I just being drawn to this particular headstone? Um, so there was a lot of spiritual connection there. And then I feel like it was just even more confirmed by our tours. And then
yeah.
I've had a lot of experience in Whitehall, especially with them messing with my electronics.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I will end. They've been active lately, and it's funny. I read this I believe in astrology, and I read this thing that said, this past weekend was supposed to be rather void of activity. That the moon was void, and that it was just going to be this blah energetic weekend. And I thought, well, that's all right. We have plenty of guests who are going to bring energy, we'll see what happens. And I felt the exact opposite this weekend as far as spirits are concerned. I did not feel that there was a void. I don't know where the void was, but it wasn't in Mystic. And I occasionally, over the 7 years I've been giving tours, have gotten flustered by a spirit. But I can probably tell you it's been 2 times in the past 7 years before this weekend that I've gotten so flustered that I stutter over my words for a minute and have to like recenter myself, because I'm used to seeing spirits, shadows wandering by, or feeling like something touched me on the tours. And that's the nature of what we do. But this past weekend in Whitehall, where so many of us are referencing on our Mystic Graveyard tour, I was at one of the last stops at the one of the final graves in the what is considered to be the slave burial ground of Whitehall Cemetery. And I was introducing folks to this fabulous gentleman and his wife who are buried there. And as I was telling the story of these folks, I was looking around at my guests. I kind of, tend to look back and forth, and it was a big group. So I was moving my head a lot, and I get that. But all of a sudden, I got the sense one of my guests was very close to me, which was strange because we tell them stay away from us. It's COVID, social distance, and and right next to me at the grave, and there's no tall grave next to the one I'm standing in front of or behind. There's not, and it was a tall, person I could see standing there. And I looked over and I went to look at them to, see what was up or why they came to get my attention. And I saw the shape of a person for just what was a moment, like a moment enough to know it was a person, but also just so briefly that I knew it wasn't a living person, if that makes sense, but just standing right there. And, my guests all heard me kind of like pause and look to the side, and I was like, I'm so sorry to divert you mid-sentence from what I was saying, but I just looked right here and there's this, figure, and I do believe that it was likely, I actually think it was his wife rather than him, because we've been talking about her a bit more, or their child, that we've also started mentioning in the tours more. So I think who became a grown adult too, but I think maybe she wandered down to that area. But I just saw them, that brief full-bodied apparition for the first time in a while. It's often shadows, but just clear as I saw you guys was someone there for a moment, and it flustered me. I finished the story. Luckily, it was near the end of the tour, so I didn't lose a whole tour of, feeling that side of my body all chilled. But I think the spirits, in some, I knew, I love that I could ask all of you, has anything happened? Right away, everyone has something that happened. And so
in addition with that, I usually do at the end of the tours with Courtney, I usually do the photos, and we show the photos on our tablets. And when I got to this series of photos of this particular gravesite, the images weren't actually come up on the tablet. I could go through the other photos, and as soon as I got to the series of photos of him, it would just go black.
Yes. So they're there. And that's the other question too. People say, will something happen while I'm on a tour? It's never something we can guarantee. And the spirits choose who they appear to and for what reason. But I think hopefully just by these stories from the last couple of weeks, you guys can see that They are absolutely there. They're watching. They know that we're coming to see them, and they are strengthening in their energy, as we near Halloween time, and celebrating them even more each day. So we hope that you can come and join us in Mystic. We are going out 6 nights a week right now. We also have some late night tours coming up on the 24th and 31st, and some paranormal investigations coming up then as well, if you really want to get involved with talking to the ghosts. And after that, we will still be going through November, and our Ghost of Christmas Past tours will be coming in December. So stay in touch with us. Book online at seasideshadows.com for a tour. We are continuing our virtual segments. Shay has been a lifesaver, and helping us keep those alive during our busy season, which is very good, because we want to make sure that we keep still producing content for you. So please keep tuning in, subscribing to our YouTube and our Instagram, so that we can share these with you. And we wish you all happy haunts, and hopefully we will be seeing you this October. And have a good night, everybody.